Hello, everyone. Andy Goldberg here on the Founders Chair podcast. Welcome back. I'm very delighted to have on the show today Lorenzo Conti from Crover. Lorenzo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Really glad to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure welcoming you onto the Founders Chair podcast. I guess, Lorenzo, let's just start. If you can tell us a little bit about you personally, where you're from, where you live, and what you get up to when you're not working.
I was born in Rome, in Italy. I moved over to the UK when I was about 16 years old, originally for sixth form, and then eventually I ended up in Edinburgh for university, where I did my bachelor, master, PhD. Had a bit of like kind of stints of working in the engineering sector in Switzerland, Germany, and Italy in between as well. And yeah, then I'm still here. I'm still in Edinburgh. We we started Crover here. It's a great place to start a company. There's a fantastic ecosystem in Scotland and Edinburgh specifically, and we're lucky that there's more and more kind of robotics activity in the city as well. In terms of what I do when I'm working, I mean, not a lot since starting the company. Uh, Obviously there's it's more than a job. It's kind of a passion as well. And since I started, that's really where I put most of my time.
So, and are you settled here now in Scotland, or do you flip between here and Italy, or is this your home now?
I don't go back to Italy very often, anymore. I mean, my parents are there, but I've been in Edinburgh for the last 15 years, and so
Yeah.
that's really where I call home now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not from Scotland either. I'm American, but when I moved over here, that you just make it your home, right? Like where you are is your home. You don't keep thinking about far away. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, Scottish people are very welcoming,
yeah.
warm, and yeah, it's a great place.
Tell us a little bit, first of all, then about how the business came about, the story of how the business came about, and what made you feel, Lorenzo, that you had the confidence to be a business owner?
Yeah, it wasn't really something that, like, starting a business was not something that I was planning to do in my lifetime originally. I was, I was always more kind of scientifically and mathematically minded. I ended up doing a PhD at the University of Edinburgh in the field of granular materials or granular rheology, which is the study of how granular materials like sand, grains, or powders flow. And towards the end of that, I had a bit of an intuition that led to discovering uh, a novel physical effect in this kind of materials, which represents the first feasible method for moving through those kind of environments, especially moving below the ground of things like sand dunes or grain.
Mhm.
Uh, there have been various attempts over time, but none that had been able to move without external propulsion below the surface, and especially not to move in multiple directions. And so, that's really kind of that discovery was that what led to even just considering starting a business. I have to say a lot of that was also thanks to the fantastic team at Edinburgh Innovations and Edinburgh Innovation Student, which is the team at the University of Edinburgh that supports students and employees from the university to consider and learn about business and potentially starting a venture. When I first came out with the discovery, I was it was recommended to me to have a meeting with some of the advisors there, and especially one of them, Rossi, he very nicely kind of started giving me reading material, and without even telling me, like, yeah, no one there really told me you gotta start a business, this is what we should do. They just kind of presented information to me, and kind of reading through that eventually made it obvious that the academic path was not the best one to potentially kind of create actual tangible impact for the discovery that I made, but rather that kind of starting a business with all the uncertainty and risk involved, but that will still be kind of the best path to take that idea forward. And I mean that was some years ago, and then obviously it's been a challenge kind of taking a novel physical effect into turning that into a product. That's really been what we spent a lot of the time since starting the company on, and now we've got a kind of fairly robust product that we can market more widely. But really kind of that R&D aspect and going from kind of research and proof of concept to a fully fledged product has been the most challenging one.
I mean, it's a very kind of niche industry you're in, a very specialist technology that you studied at university. Like, how did you get interested in that? Was there somebody, or was there an influence, or did you just wake up one morning and decide this is what you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I mean it's niche, but at the same time, it's one of those areas where like people don't understand. Like I mean, most common people aren't really aware of how much it touches on kind of our daily lives and then on kind of like the global market. Like obviously everyone knows what a fluid is, but most people haven't heard of granular materials. When you mention it, most people are like, what is that? What is that word even? But like granular materials, they're actually like the largest family of traded commodities worldwide, even more than fluids. Like the amount of fluids traded every year is less than the amount of granular materials. It's just that a lot of those is like kind of dry powders or other kind of bulks that eventually get processed. And so a lot of it you don't a lot, you'll know the name of the specific types, whether it's like sand or lithium powder or something else. People aren't really aware of the category as a whole. And also from a kind of scientific perspective, the very old type of like the models that used to describe those used to be the likes of like soil mechanics, which will look at it as almost like a solid or like a continuum material. And it's only the last kind of 20 years or so that both thanks to like computational advances that enable to like the simulation of the individual particles and the contacts between them, and also kind of new mathematical models has enabled the field to become almost like kind of its own kind of scientific discipline, because these materials, they behave very differently from like fluids and solids or other kinds of materials.
So tell us where the company stands now. What's your main offering today, and who's your main kind of target customer?
Yeah, so at the moment we're working primarily with grain storage operators with large scale kind of centralized storage facilities. So the likes of grain merchants, cooperatives, port operators, and also agriculture inspection companies that kind of go to those places and collect samples and measurements. And we primarily help them improve the health and safety of their operations and the efficiency of making sure that more grain reaches the end of the supply chain. So when it goes into storage or in transportation, maintaining the quality of the stock, so that when you go and take it out of the storage or transportation unit, it's got at the very least the same quality that it came in, especially several months later, or even like a year or two later in some situations. So it's really about kind of making sure that you keep an accurate eye on the quality of their stock, proactively managing the storage conditions and quality. So making sure that things like temperature, moisture, and CO2 remain within safe ranges that make sure that pests like insects and molds, they cannot grow. So our system, one of the things that our system provides is it monitors those three parameters: temperature, moisture, and CO2, and throughout the bulk can detect hot spots, wet spots, and other problematic areas, because you usually have gradients of conditions within those bulks. We also collect samples that help with like traceability and like kind of complying with different grain contracts. And also, as our robot swims through the grain, it also steers the bulk, kind of breaking and preventing crusts and keeping the old grain more aerated. So it's almost like a kind of fully fledged system now
Yeah.
that takes care of most grain storage management operations.
So tell us a little bit about since you've become a business owner, right? And how long have you now been a business owner?
Well, we officially incorporated in 2018. I was still doing a PhD at the time, so it wasn't like 100% on it yet.
Yeah, but
Uh,
you can still be wrapping up your education and doing other things. You got to eat too, right? So,
yeah,
so 7 years roughly.
yeah.
What's been your biggest learning since you've become a business owner?
I mean, as a first-time founder, I think the most shocking thing was that you hear a lot of like overnight successes in the news, and they often make it sound like you have a good idea or a new discovery, and then the next day you're kind of like a millionaire. And that's kind of what a lot of people think, that people that haven't been in business like think, and just realizing like how much longer and how much more capital than you expect it actually takes in reality. I think that's really been the biggest learning. And obviously, now we're able to predict timelines and budgets and other things much more effectively. But at the very beginning, it was definitely a learning curve, and also figuring out how to get access to the funding required, especially for like early stage technologies. That's a uphill battle every time.
And did you expect the learning curve to be as steep as it was when you started a business? Like they don't teach you this stuff at uni, do they?
No, I mean the learning aspect I really enjoy it. I mean I really like kind of learning new things. And now for sure, like they don't teach at university, and I think also um, like some universities like I was lucky at the University of Edinburgh that we had, like I was saying, Edinburgh Innovations. They've got a kind of team and commercial arm specifically dedicated to like helping academics kind of go through that path. But at the same time, academics purely in academia, they might have done research for 30 or 40 years, but they most of them aren't really kind of aware of the real kind of commercial and industrial uh, art of taking time something to market, with some exceptions, obviously. But so yeah, I mean, learning that has been, I have to say, fun. I think the thing that is not fun per se is the financial instability that comes with starting and running a business, having to take care of like your team, and working with limited resources. When you're a large company, you're like, okay, this project needs that much, and then you
Yeah.
have to put that plan through the higher stages, and eventually, if there's some logic to it, it gets approved. At a startup level, you might have like the most bulletproof plan possible, but you still have to go around and find the people that are the right fit that would fund it. And in some situations, the funding that you actually need might not be available, and so you gotta make do with what is actually available, which sometimes also leads to maybe doing things imperfectly. I think there's definitely a lot of things that we could have done better over time, that we would have done better if we had the right budget available. But then you got to take shortcuts that eventually kind of hit you in the long term, but just because you have no other option sometimes, right? You're just like, this is the budget that I have. I cannot hire someone more senior, say, for that role. I just gotta get somewhere junior and kind of just train them up. And apart from that, taking more time, it just leads to certain things, not being done as
Sure.
well as it should. So, yeah.
Well, you hear plenty of stories of successful entrepreneurs who would sleep on their pal's sofa and, while they were starting out because they couldn't afford their own place. And Jeff Bezos's desk was a door in his garage, right? So sometimes you've got to You've got to you can only do what you can with the funds that you have until you grow your business and get a bit of financial stability.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't pay myself through the business a salary until a few years into it. Was lucky to have a bit of savings left to just about to pay for a flat for kind of those first years, and yeah, definitely burned through all my savings during that time. But it was a decision that I was happy to make. Our first lab, if you may call it that, like the place where we started prototyping was my living room. And initially I just put together a scrappy prototype myself, and then after that, when we got the first kind of team member involved, then we bought a kind of desktop 3D printer with a £200 Amazon voucher that I won from a university competition, and started kind of making some prototypes, and that already felt like a big step up at the time. And and then kind of flashed back to today. Obviously, there was a lot of steps in between, but we just gradually grew from that to having a really good lab and office of the National Robotarium in Edinburgh.
So what's been your biggest challenge during the years, and how did you have people around you to help you through that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, you're in Scotland as well, Andy, right? Like, I think we've got a really good ecosystem here where, like, what I've noticed is if you need some advice or some support, uh, if you're, open enough to ask for it, you'll always find people that are willing to help, at least at an advice level. And yeah, I think that's one of the strengths of the ecosystem for sure. And also you've got, a variety of organizations like Scottish Enterprise, Converge, and so on that really help also connect people, because sometimes it's also, just not knowing who the relevant person that you can talk to is. Yeah, I think, from day one, thanks to the team at Edinburgh Innovation, and then kind of branching out from that, we've been able to tap into various forms of support and advice, and that's really kind of has been one of the key factors that led us to where we are today.
Great. And financial instability aside, at the start, during your 7 year plus journey, did you have any like major, not major, but challenges that really kind of stopped you in your tracks and made you think, can I do this? Like, I don't know, for some people it was COVID, for others it was Brexit. Was there anything that really tried to get in your way that you had to push through?
Oh, I mean, could probably write an entire book about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think challenges are like part of the daily life as we're running a business as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, there's hardly a day when at least some form of challenge comes up. A lot of times it might be like a small one that you can solve pretty quickly. Um, Other times, I mean, a lot of times it just takes a lot of resilience. So you just not letting yourself kind of be pulled down from by that, and just kind of pushing through. I think that's kind of one of the key elements. I think, especially like starting from that kind of like university environment, you see a lot of other people starting up,
Hmm.
and a lot of those, I know people kind of say fail, but like I would say, like, most businesses, they don't really fail. Like, people just give up at some point. Um, and like, yeah, like I think really like the biggest factor that I've seen in, those other, in some cases like great entrepreneurs as well that I've met, is just like, at some point someone will face some form of challenge, and eventually they just decide that that's like kind of too big for them to carry on and find a way around it. And so really just that resilient piece, it's the biggest one. And it also, I think part of it is also that, like, when in some cases you gotta make a life decision and kind of change uh your life and that of those around you to make the business work. And sometimes people might have a family or a partner or other, some other thing that they need to prioritize compared to the business, and I think that's totally understandable. And so, yeah, just making those compromises, I guess
Definitely.
it's probably the biggest challenge.
Definitely. Well, I mean, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, right? So you're taking on a commitment, you're taking on a lot of responsibility. So you've got to give it that, certainly at the start, I guess.
Yeah.
What's the next big thing for you in your business, Lorenzo? What do the next 1 to 3 years look like in terms of growth, challenges, opportunities?
Yeah, now we're getting, like most of the time spent up to that point has been in like kind of maturing the product and really getting it to a stage where we could scale up. Now we're launching more widely commercially. We're starting to do sales also in the US and in other geographies. And so, like it's really an exciting time because, as you said, you work through these early stages, and sometimes it takes quite a bit of time. As we were saying, it took us, about 7 years to get to this point. That's been, really the challenging part. And now we're kind of like having fun also getting more robots out there, getting more, commercially active, and really seeing, even more impact
Mm.
in the grain sector, and also kind of starting to expand into some other adjacent sectors where ground materials are involved, like minerals, chemical powders. We're also looking into some opportunities in like kind of space exploration as well. So yeah, as you said, it's getting fun, but also as you grow operations, there's also some risks that increase. You also have like more costs and things that you got to balance more. More people that you're responsible for, and so it's also making sure that growth is balanced to a level that you can keep the business going.
Indeed. So we've already gotten quite a bit of it of learnings from you in this chat for anybody who's watching who's trying to soak in the knowledge. Do you have any other advice for business owners or would-be business owners who are just starting out on their own or who are considering starting out on their own?
Yeah, I mean, I think every business is different, and from my experience, I've really seen mostly the scenario of what we call a deep tech business, where you've got like a science-based innovation, and a lot of the uncertainty and challenges with that has to do with developing and getting a product that is very different to the market. And I mean, another big learning is around kind of educating the market and really like figuring out which channels and which information is really effective for your end, for your customer base. In our case, we tried a variety of channels, like kind of primarily, kind of unpaid ones up to this stage. Obviously we're on a podcast even now, but just getting into like agricultural publications and other things. But in the end, what we learned really works best in the agriculture sector is like word of mouth. Getting some influential people in the sector using the product and then telling more people about it. There's definitely that kind of peer confirmation that is very, very important in our sector. But then it might not apply as much in other sectors, especially if you're selling a B2C product. I think it's very different from what we're doing. You might have like, social media and other things that are maybe more effective. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Well, look, Lorenzo, we've come to the end of the Founders Chair interview today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I mean, I've already taken quite a lot of inspiration from what you've achieved, and you've got an incredible future of growth ahead of you in this company. I mean, I'm really impressed. But thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
And thanks to all of our viewers and all of our listeners for coming back to the Founders Chair podcast. Keep an eye out on our YouTube channel for more in the coming weeks. But once again, this has been Andy Goldberg, and I've been speaking with Lorenzo Conti from his company, Crover. Lorenzo, thanks again.